Welcome to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where ancient tales and legendary journeys come to life. Today we embark on a thrilling new saga of honor, redemption, and the pursuit of a legendary blade. Prepare to enter a world where warriors struggle with fate and the weight of their choices. This is Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold. Let's dive into Chapter 1, The Ronin's Burden. In the fading glow of twilight, a lone figure wanders the dirt roads of Edo. His once pristine armor is battered, his kimono stained with the dust of countless miles traveled. He is a Ronin, a samurai without a master, a warrior without a cause. His name has long been forgotten, erased by the shame of his fate. He has no lord to serve, no honor to uphold, only debt and the hunger gnawing at his belly. The Ronin stares at the setting sun, lost in thought. Days have turned into months, and months into years since he was cast aside by his former master. In the unforgiving world of the samurai, a masterless warrior is no more than a stray dog. He's met with scorn, rejection, and the occasional handout, but never respect. Once he had dreams of rising in the ranks, serving his daimyo with loyalty and pride. But that life is gone, a distant memory that now haunts him.
I am no longer a samurai. I am nothing more than a beggar. How far I have fallen.
As dusk deepens, the Ronin passes through a small village. The villagers avert their eyes, offering neither help nor hostility. In their gaze, the Ronin sees the reflection of his own disgrace. His thoughts drift to his empty coin pouch, the debts that weigh heavy on his mind, and the looming threat of destitution. It is an unbearable burden for a man who once lived by the code of bushido. He stops in front of a humble tea house, hoping to trade a favor for a simple meal. Inside, the scent of roasted fish and fresh rice fills the air, but it is not the food that catches his attention. A group of travelers sitting at the far end of the room are talking in hushed voices. One word rises above the rest: Kinkatana, the blade of gold.
The blade of gold? What is this they speak of?
Curiosity piqued, the Ronin edges closer, listening intently. The travelers speak of a mythical sword, said to be hidden in the distant mountains of Kinkatana. The sword, forged by the gods themselves, is rumored to grant its wielder untold wealth. But with great power comes a curse, one that has driven men to madness and ruin. One of the travelers lowers his voice, his words filled with caution.
It's said the blade is cursed. Many have sought it, but none have returned. Still, imagine the fortune, the power it could bring.
Fortune? Ha! It's not fortune that follows the blade, it's death. Only a fool would seek such a sword.
A fool, or a man with nothing left to lose?
The words hang in the air, echoing in the Ronin's mind. A man with nothing left to lose. He turns away from the conversation, his heart heavy with a decision. The blade of gold, a weapon of legend, a treasure that could wipe away his debts and restore his lost honor. But at what cost? That night, as he sleeps beneath the stars, the Ronin dreams of the sword. In his dream, the blade gleams in the light of a full moon, its golden surface reflecting the faces of those who once held it. The faces twist and distort into images of suffering, their mouths whispering warnings that the Ronin cannot understand. When he awakens, the dawn has broken, and with it, a new resolve.
I have no choice. This sword, this blade of gold, it is my only hope. I must find it. I will face whatever curse it holds. If I die, so be it. But I will not live in disgrace any longer.
With nothing but his worn-out katana at his side and the weight of his debts on his shoulders, the Ronin sets out on a journey towards the distant mountains where the blade of gold is said to rest. His path is fraught with danger, and the whispers of the blade's curse follow him like a shadow. But in the Ronin's heart there is no fear, only determination. He must reclaim his honor, no matter the cost. And so begins the Ronin's journey. One of honor, greed, and the lure of power. Will he find the blade of gold and reclaim his lost honor? Or will the curse consume him, as it has so many others before? Only time will tell. Thank you for joining us on this epic first chapter of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold, here on Black X Wolf Entertainment. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more legendary stories. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may your path be honorable and your sword sharp.
Welcome back to Black's Wolf Entertainment, where the stories of ancient warriors and legendary artifacts unfold. In the last chapter of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold, the Ronin's Burden, we followed a fallen Ronin who learned of a mythical weapon, the Blade of Gold, that could restore his lost honor. Today we continue with Chapter 2, The Merchant's Gambit. Will the Ronin's desire for redemption lead him to fortune or doom? Let's find out. The road stretches endlessly ahead, lined by towering pine trees that sway gently in the breeze. The Ronin's journey has only just begun, yet each step feels heavier than the last. His mind races, thoughts of the Blade of Gold consuming him. The promise of wealth and fortune gnaws at his soul, but so too does the warning of its curse. Despite the uncertainty, he presses onward, for what other choice does he have? Days blur together, and soon his provisions run low. The few coins left in his pouch are scarcely enough for a meal. Hunger claws at him, but the weight of his debts is far greater. In his desperation, he grows weary, stumbling across the dirt path. Just as the sun begins to set, casting a golden hue across the horizon, the Ronin spots a small, weathered cart by the side of the road. Beside it stands a figure, cloaked in a faded kimono. The man, hunched over with age, appears to be a merchant, his cart filled with curious wares that glisten in the twilight. Approaching cautiously, the Ronin eyes the merchant with suspicion. But the merchant's face is calm, his eyes sharp and knowing. As if sensing the Ronin's plight, the merchant speaks before the Ronin can utter a word.
Ah, a traveler burdened by the weight of the world. You seek something, do you not? Something golden? Rumors travel faster than the wind, my friend. And those who seek the blade are often men like you, desperate, searching for something more. But I would warn you, that which shines the brightest often casts the darkest shadow.
The Ronin's heart skips a beat. His eyes narrow as he studies the merchant. Could this man truly know of the Blade of Gold, or was he just another charlatan, preying on the weak?
What do you know of the blade? Speak plainly.
I know enough. It's said that those who seek the blade do so for fortune, but none find what they truly desire. Wealth, honor, these things come at a price. The blade is not simply a weapon, it is a curse, a burden that few can carry. Yet here you stand. Are you prepared to pay the price?
The Ronin hesitates, the merchant's words striking a chord deep within him. Could the blade truly be cursed? Or was this simply another test, another challenge he must overcome to reclaim his lost honor? But as his stomach growls and the weight of his debts presses down on him, doubt fades, replaced by a familiar feeling, desperation. He must press on, he must find the blade, no matter the cost.
I've lost everything. My honor, my status, my fortune. If this blade can restore even a fraction of what I once had, I'll take the risk. Tell me where to find it.
Very well. The blade lies deep in the mountains of Kinkatana. But be warned, the path is treacherous. You'll face more than just the elements. There are those who guard the blade, driven mad by its power. Men who once sought the blade for themselves, now twisted by greed and fear.
The Ronin feels a chill run down his spine, but he pushes the fear aside. He has come too far to turn back now.
Before you go, I offer one final piece of advice. Do not let greed consume you, for it is greed that the blade feeds upon. You may believe you seek it for honor, but be wary. Greed is a silent enemy. It will creep into your heart when you least expect it.
Greed. No. I do this for my honor, for the life I once had. I am not some common thief seeking wealth for wealth's sake. I must remember that.
I appreciate the warning, but my path is clear.
The merchant nods solemnly, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding of the Ronin's plight. He reaches into his cart and pulls out a small flask, offering it to the Ronin.
For the journey ahead, it's not much, but it will keep your strength up. You'll need it.
Thank you. May we meet again in better circumstances.
With that, the Ronin continues his journey, the merchant's words echoing in his mind. Greed, curse, madness. Could these warnings be true? Or were they simply the ramblings of an old man? As the Ronin ascends the rugged mountain path, the air grows colder and the terrain more treacherous. His thoughts grow darker with each step. He tells himself he seeks the blade for his honor, for redemption. but deep within, a voice whispers of the fortune it could bring, the life of luxury it could restore.
I will not let greed consume me. I seek this blade for my honor. My honor.
Yet with each step, the blade's allure grows stronger. And as the Ronin climbs higher, the line between honor and greed begins to blur. And so, the Ronin's journey continues. His path fraught with peril, his mind clouded by doubt. Will he remain true to his cause, or will the promise of fortune drive him to madness? Only time will reveal his fate. Thank you for watching Chapter 2 of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold on Black X Wolf Entertainment. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more epic tales of warriors and their legendary quests. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, remember, honor is a blade that cuts both ways.
Welcome back to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where ancient legends come to life. If you've been following our journey, you know that the fallen Ronin is in search of the legendary Blade of Gold, a sword said to grant fortune and power. But with each step, the path grows darker, and his own doubts begin to rise. In today's episode, Chapter 3, The Road to Kinkatana, our Ronin sets out on a dangerous trek towards the fabled mountain where the blade awaits. Will he make it, or will the journey break him first? Let's find out! With the merchant's warning still fresh in his mind, the Ronin sets his sights on Kinkatana Mountain, the place where legends say the Blade of Gold is hidden. The wind howls as he moves deeper into the wilderness, the jagged peaks of Kinkatana looming in the distance like the teeth of a great beast. For days, the Ronin walks in silence, his footsteps crunching against the gravel path.
Is this truly the way of bushido? To chase after a blade, a myth for fortune? Is it not wealth that dishonors the soul of a warrior? Have I strayed too far from my path?
The Ronin was once a samurai of great repute, his blade sharp, his loyalty unshakable. But loyalty without a lord to serve is a hollow thing. And now, his debts and failures follow him like shadows. As the sun dips below the horizon, the sky painted in deep shades of red and gold, the Ronin finds himself at the edge of a dark forest. The trees are ancient and twisted, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. Beyond this forest lies Kinkatana Mountain, but the path forward is far from clear.
Bushido, the code I swore to uphold, duty, loyalty, honor. How far have I fallen from those ideals? I tell myself this quest is for honor, but in truth, it is for survival. I need the Blade of Gold, not for glory, but to escape the crushing weight of debt.
He steps into the forest, the ground soft and damp beneath his feet. The air grows colder, heavier with the scent of moss and decay. Each rustle of leaves feels like a whisper, mocking, as if the very forest knows of his inner turmoil. But beneath the practical reasoning, another thought festers, one the Ronin dares not fully confront: the allure of power, the idea of reclaiming not just his honor but more: wealth, prestige, even the fear and respect of others. He shakes his head, trying to dispel these dangerous thoughts, but they cling to him like mist. As he continues deeper into the forest, a soft glow catches his eye. He follows the light to a clearing where an ancient shrine stands, worn by time. Stone lanterns flicker dimly, casting long shadows across the moss-covered ground. At the center of the shrine lies a stone tablet, engraved with an inscription. The Ronin approaches the tablet, brushing his fingers against the worn carvings. The language is old, but he can still make out its meaning. Those who seek the Blade of Gold, beware. It is not fortune you will find, but the shadow of greed, and in its grasp, honor dies. His heart skips a beat. The words, though weathered, strike deep into his core.
Greed. The very thing the merchant warned me of. Could it be that this entire journey is a test of my resolve as a warrior, or a trap laid by my own desires?
The Ronin stands there for a long moment, staring at the inscription. His hands clench into fists. He cannot turn back now, not after coming this far. Yet the words of the shrine stir doubt in his mind. A sudden rustling from behind causes him to turn, hand instinctively gripping the hilt of his sword. From the shadows emerges a figure, a traveler, much like himself, clad in worn armor. The stranger's face is gaunt, his eyes hollow, as though he has not known rest for many days.
You seek the Blade of Gold, don't you?
I do. And what of it?
I once sought it too, many years ago. But the further I ventured, the less of myself I became. The closer I came to the blade, the more it consumed me, until there was nothing left but the hunger for gold. Turn back now, before it's too late.
The Ronin studies the traveler, his heart heavy with indecision. Could this man be telling the truth? Or was he simply another lost soul, broken by his own failures? But as the wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of distant rain, the Ronin's resolve hardens. He cannot, will not be swayed by the words of another. He has made his choice, and there is no turning back.
I will find the blade. I will reclaim my honor.
Honor? That's what I told myself too. But honor means nothing when your soul is weighed down by greed. Remember my words, stranger. The path to Kinkatana is not one of fortune, but of sacrifice.
The traveler disappears into the forest, leaving the Ronin standing alone once more. His words linger in the air, but the Ronin shakes them off. He has no time for doubt. His path is set. As night falls, the Ronin presses on toward Kinkatana Mountain, his thoughts a whirlwind of uncertainty. The shrine's warning, the traveler's words. They gnaw at him, yet his feet continue to move forward, driven by something deeper than reason.
I do this for my honor, for my survival, well, but what if I lose myself along the way?
And so, the Ronin marches ever closer to his goal, though the shadows of doubt and greed continue to loom over him. Will he remain true to his path, or will the blade of gold lead him into darkness? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching Chapter 3 of On Black X Wolf Entertainment. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more epic samurai tales. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest episodes. Until next time, remember, the path of honor is paved with choices and not all are easy. Welcome back to Black X Wolf Entertainment. Today, our journey through ancient Japan continues with Chapter 4 of, in this episode, Ambush of the Mountain Bandits. Our Ronin faces a deadly trap in the depths of a bamboo forest. But the blade's curse is no secret. Others hunger for its power. Will our Ronin survive this ambush, or will he fall victim to the greed of others? Let's find out. The bamboo forest stood tall and silent, its towering stalks swaying gently in the wind. The rustling of the leaves was the only sound, a soft whisper carried on the breeze. The Ronin's eyes were sharp, scanning his surroundings as he moved forward, each step careful and deliberate. Days had passed since he left the shrine, and the warning etched into its stone tablet haunted his thoughts. But there was no turning back now. Kinkatana Mountain loomed ahead, and somewhere within its shadows lay the blade of gold. The thought of the blade's power still stirred an uneasy feeling deep within him, but his resolve was ironclad. Yet, there was another truth he could not ignore. He was not the only one seeking the blade.
Many have heard the legend. They'll kill for the chance to possess it. I must stay vigilant.
The Ronin pressed forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword as he navigated the dense bamboo forest. His instincts, honed through years of battle, began to tingle with unease. There was something wrong, something off about the stillness around him. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the silence, a rustle too heavy to be the wind. The Ronin paused, his grip tightening on his sword, eyes narrowing.
They're close.
He barely had time to react when a sudden flash of movement came from the shadows. A figure lunged toward him with a gleaming blade, aiming for his throat. With lightning speed, the Ronin unsheathed his katana, blocking the attack and pushing his assailant back. Mountain bandits. The Ronin had heard of them, the scourge of travelers on these dangerous paths. But these men were no ordinary thieves. Their eyes gleamed with a desperate hunger, their faces twisted with greed. They wanted the blade of gold. They believed the Ronin had already found it. The first bandit snarled and charged again, his movements wild and untrained. The Ronin sidestepped easily, delivering a swift strike to his side. The bandit let out a cry of pain, collapsing to the ground, but the fight was far from over. From the shadows of the bamboo forest, more figures emerged, 5 in total, each armed with crude but deadly weapons. Then, in an instant, the bandits attacked.
The Ronin moved like a shadow, his katana flashing in the dim light of the forest. He deflected strikes from all directions, parrying and countering with lethal precision. His movements were fluid, a testament to years of training and battle-hardened experience. But these were not mere peasants or common thieves. The bandits were skilled, their attacks coordinated, and they outnumbered him. This is no ordinary fight. These men know how to kill.
One of the bandits swung a heavy axe toward the Ronin's chest. The Ronin ducked, the blade slicing through the air above him. He spun on his heel, delivering a quick slash to the bandit's arm, disarming him. The man fell back with a grunt, clutching his wound. But before the Ronin could catch his breath, another attacker rushed forward, a spear aimed directly at his heart. The Ronin twisted his body just in time, the spear grazing his side, drawing a line of blood across his robe. Pain shot through him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the fight. He couldn't afford to be distracted.
I must end this quickly or they'll wear me down.
The Ronin knew he had to act. He couldn't let himself be surrounded any longer. With a fierce cry, he surged forward, driving his katana through the bandit with the spear. The man's eyes widened in shock before he crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The remaining bandits hesitated, their confidence wavering as they saw their comrades fall. But the leader, enraged by the loss of his men, charged at the Ronin with a roar. His attacks were furious, his swings wild and reckless, but the Ronin remained calm, his blade moving with precision. In a swift motion, the Ronin disarmed the leader and delivered a final, decisive blow. The bandit fell to the ground, motionless. Silence fell over the bamboo forest once more. The Ronin stood amidst the fallen bodies, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. His side throbbed with pain, but he had survived. But victory brought no relief. As the Ronin wiped the blood from his blade, a harsh truth settled over him. The legend of the blade of gold had spread far and wide, and there would be others like these bandits, hungry for power, willing to kill for it. His journey was only growing more dangerous. He looked down at the leader's lifeless body, his brow furrowing in thought.
How many more will I have to kill? How many will come for me, believing I hold the blade? And what will I become by the time I reach King Katana Mountain?
The Ronin sheathed his sword, his face grim. He knew the path ahead would be perilous, but he had no choice. The blade of gold was his only chance to reclaim his honor, to lift himself from the depths of despair. But at what cost? With a final glance at the fallen bandits, the Ronin turned and continued his journey. The bamboo forest, once silent and peaceful, now seemed to hum with the echoes of battle, a reminder of the blood that had been spilled. The road to King Katana was long and treacherous, and the Ronin knew he was far from its end. Thank you for joining us for Chapter 4 of The Ronin's journey has only just begun, and with each step the path grows darker. Don't miss the next episode as we continue deeper into this ancient tale. Like, comment and subscribe to Black X Wolf Entertainment for more epic adventures. And remember, true honor is forged through the trials we endure. Until next time. Welcome to another episode of On Black X Wolf Entertainment. In today's chapter, The Swordsmith's Omen, our Ronin finds himself at a crossroads between fate and fortune. He meets an old swordsmith who warns of the dangers that lie ahead. Will our hero heed these warnings, or will his desperation push him further down a perilous path? Let's dive in. The Ronin trudged along the narrow path, his body weary from the battle with the mountain bandits. His left side still ached where a spear had grazed him, and though the wound had begun to heal, the journey ahead seemed endless. The bamboo forest was far behind him, but in its place was a heavy mist clinging to the earth like an omen of the dangers that lay ahead. As he approached a small village nestled in the foothills of King Katana Mountain, He could feel the weight of his sword dragging at his side. The once sharp blade had been chipped and dulled by battle, and though he had survived, the damage was apparent. He needed rest. He needed his blade restored. He entered the village quietly, eyes scanning the humble wooden homes, the rice fields swaying in the distance. The villagers eyed him warily, his ragged clothes and weathered face marking him as a Ronin, masterless and fallen from grace.
Another wandering warrior? What misfortune has brought him here?
Ignoring their whispers, the Ronin made his way to the heart of the village, where a plume of smoke rose from a small thatched roof workshop. The clang of hammer against steel echoed in the air, a swordsmith at work. As he neared the forge, an old man, bent with age and marked by the scars of his trade, looked up from his anvil. His hands were blackened by soot, and his eyes, though clouded with age, gleamed with an inner fire.
You've come far, Ronin. What brings you to my forge? My blade is damaged. I seek its repair.
The swordsmith nodded, extending a hand toward the Ronin's katana. With a weary sigh, the Ronin handed over his weapon, watching as the old man inspected the blade with the care of a craftsman who had spent a lifetime perfecting his art. The swordsmith ran his fingers along the edge, tracing the nicks and chips in the steel. His expression grew grave, as if the blade itself spoke of the hardships its wielder had faced.
There's a rumor that's been spreading through these lands. A legend of a blade forged not by mortal hands, but by the spirits themselves. They call it the Blade of Gold, Kinkatana. It's said to grant fortune to its wielder, riches beyond measure. But there is another side to that tale, one that many choose to ignore. And what is that? Those who seek the blade are often consumed by their own greed. The blade doesn't bring fortune, it brings ruin. The curse it carries feeds on the ambition of those who wield it, until nothing remains but a shadow of the man they once were.
The Ronin's eyes darkened as the swordsmith's words echoed in his mind. He had heard whispers of such curses before, of legendary weapons that were more burden than blessing. But what choice did he have? His debts weighed heavily on him, and without fortune, he would remain a wanderer, a disgrace in the eyes of those who once respected him.
The path of the warrior is filled with hardship, but honor must be restored, even at great cost. I have no choice. Honor or pride, Ronin? There is a fine line between the two. Many warriors have walked that path before you, seeking to restore what they have lost, and all have fallen.
The Ronin's jaw tightened. He knew the swordsmith was right, but the weight of his past and the desperate need for redemption drowned out the old man's warning.
Then I shall be the one to succeed where others have failed. As you wish. But remember, Ronin, not all treasure is worth the price it demands.
The swordsmith turned back to his work, the rhythmic clanging of his hammer against the steel filling the small forge. Sparks flew into the air, illuminating the room with flashes of light as the blade began to take shape once more. The Ronin watched in silence, his thoughts heavy with the weight of the swordsmith's words. He had set out on this journey believing that the blade of gold would be his salvation, that it would bring him the fortune he needed to reclaim his honor. But now, doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. Still, he could not turn back. Not now. He was too far down the path to stop. Hours passed, and at last the swordsmith lifted the newly repaired katana from the anvil, its edge gleaming in the firelight. The Ronin took the blade, feeling its weight in his hand, the familiar grip of the hilt steadying his resolve.
The blade is mended, but remember this. No sword, no matter how sharp, can cut through fate. Choose your path wisely, Ronin. My thanks, old one. I will remember your words.
With his katana now restored, the Ronin left the forge and stepped into the fading light of dusk. The village was quiet, the air heavy with the scent of rain on the wind. As he walked, the swordsmith's warning echoed in his mind, a haunting refrain that would not be silenced.
The blade of gold, a curse or a gift, I have no choice but to find out.
The road ahead was long, and the shadow of Kinkatana Mountain loomed ever larger on the horizon. But the Ronin's heart, though filled with doubt, would not waver. His journey would continue, and the blade of gold awaited him. Whether it would bring fortune or ruin, only time would tell. What dangers lie ahead on the road to Kinkatana Mountain? Subscribe to Black X Wolf Entertainment for more epic storytelling. And don't forget to like, comment, and hit the bell for notifications. The Path of the Warrior continues next time, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Black X Wolf Entertainment. Here, legends are reborn and honor is tested. Today we continue the journey of a fallen samurai chasing fortune through the cursed blade of gold. Will greed or honor triumph? Prepare yourself for Chapter 6, Ghosts of the Fallen Clan. The Ronin walked with steady, resolute steps, his worn sandals dragging slightly through the dust of an abandoned path. Before him lay the ruins of what was once a proud and prosperous village. The sun, veiled by a dense layer of clouds, cast long shadows over the broken wooden gates and crumbling buildings. The air was still, yet it felt thick with an unseen presence. The whispers of the past lingered here. "This place," the Ronin muttered, his voice barely audible over the soft breeze that crept through the desolate streets. His eyes, cold and hardened by years of wandering, scanned the decayed remnants of the village. Roofs had caved in, doors hung off their hinges, and the skeletal remains of what must have been a grand temple stood in the center, its stone steps cracked and worn with age. No birds sang, no animals stirred. It was as if even life itself had abandoned this place. As he made his way deeper into the heart of the village, a chill crawled up the Ronin's spine. The temperature dropped, unnaturally so. He paused for a moment, instinctively reaching for the hilt of his sword, as though the cold might have been an enemy he could strike down. But it wasn't the cold, it was something else. Whispers began to drift around him, soft at first, like the rustling of leaves. Then they grew louder, more distinct, an eerie chorus of disembodied voices. The Ronin's grip on his sword tightened as the whispers began to form words. Greed, cursed, doomed. The words echoed through the empty streets, their source nowhere to be found. The Ronin's breath quickened, but his feet continued forward. He had faced many dangers in his life, but this felt different. He was not alone in this ghost town. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught the faintest glimpse of a figure, translucent and pale, flickering in and out of sight like a candle flame struggling against the wind. A warrior, clad in tattered armor, with hollow eyes that seemed to stare into his very soul. "Who are you?" the Ronin demanded, his voice steadier than he felt. The figure did not respond. Instead, more began to appear, one by one. Warriors, women, and children, spectral remnants of the clan that once thrived here. They stood silently, their eyes vacant, their forms shimmering like heat rising from the ground. A voice, clearer than the others, suddenly pierced through the whispers. "We were once proud, once noble." The Ronin turned sharply, his heart pounding as the ghost of an elderly man stepped forward. His form was more solid than the others, though still ethereal. His robes, though worn and faded, bore the emblem of a once mighty clan, a clan that had now fallen into obscurity. "What happened here?" the Ronin asked, though he already knew in part. His mind was drawn to the sword, the blade of gold. Always the sword, the old ghost's eyes, hollow and filled with sorrow, met the Ronin's. "We fell because of greed. The blade of gold, it cursed us. One of our own wielded it, believing it would bring us prosperity, but it brought only ruin. It consumed him, and through him destroyed us all." The Ronin's throat tightened, the warnings echoed in his mind. The merchant, the swordsmith, and now this. He had been told again and again of the curse, of the dangers that awaited any who sought the blade. But he had pushed those warnings aside, driven by his desperation, by his greed. "I am not like him," the Ronin said quietly, more to himself than to the ghost. "I will not succumb." The ghost's expression did not change. Many have said the same. For a moment, doubt gnawed at the edges of the Ronin's resolve. He had seen what greed had done to others, how it had twisted their souls and left them broken, lost. The weight of the spirit's gaze bore down on him, heavy and oppressive, as though they were waiting for him to falter. But he couldn't. He couldn't turn back now, not after coming this far. "I seek the blade for honor," the Ronin said, though the words tasted bitter on his tongue. "To reclaim what was taken from me. Not for greed, The ghost's hollow eyes studied him for a long silent moment before finally speaking again. The blade does not care for your reasons. It will test you as it tested him, and should you fail, you will join us here in the ruins of what once was. The other spirits began to stir, their forms flickering and fading in and out of existence. Their whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices all around him, repeating the same words over and over. Greed, cursed, doomed. The Ronin's pulse quickened. He tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword and pushed forward, forcing himself to move past the spirits, past the ruins, past the warnings. He could not afford to stop. Not now. The whispers continued to follow him as he left the village behind, fading into the distance but never truly disappearing. He could still feel their presence, watching him, waiting. The blade of gold was close. He knew it, but so too was the curse that came with it. And as he made his way toward the mountain, the weight of his own choices pressed down on him. He could only hope that in the end, his honor would be enough to protect him from the fate that had befallen the fallen clan. Thank you for watching Black X Wolf Entertainment, where legends live and destinies are forged. If you're enjoying the journey of our Ronin and the search for the cursed blade of gold, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more epic chapters. The tale continues and the stakes only grow higher. Until next time, honor in battle and fortune in fate.
Welcome back to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where legends are born and honor is tested. Prepare yourself for another chapter in the journey of our Ronin, as the weight of greed and honor clash beneath the sacred Torii Gate. This is Chapter 7, Duel at the Torii Gate.
The sky, still dark from the night, began to soften with the first light of dawn. The horizon glowed with hues of amber and pink, though the rising sun was not yet visible. The Ronin, weary from his travels, stood at the base of Kinkatana Mountain. Towering before him was a great Torii Gate, its red pillars weathered but sturdy, standing as the final marker of the boundary between the world of men and the sacred mountain, where legends whispered that the blade of gold lay hidden. He gazed up at the imposing gate, its curved beams casting long shadows across the ground. This was the threshold. Beyond this gate, his journey would grow more perilous, the stakes higher than ever. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, the worn leather cool beneath his palm. His heart, steady but heavy, beat in time with the soft rustling of the wind through the nearby trees. As he approached the gate, a voice, strong and firm, echoed across the clearing. The Ronin studied the man before him. It was not the first time he had encountered others seeking the legendary sword, but this was different. This was no bandit or mercenary. This man was a true warrior, bound by the same code of bushido that the Ronin himself had once followed so devoutly. Yet now, both of them were far removed from that ideal. They had been corrupted, each in their own way, by the lure of the blade of gold.
You seek the sword for the same reason I do. Greed has brought you here. Do not presume to know my reasons, Ronin. My purpose is my own. It is always greed, even if you cloak it in words of honor or duty. The blade of gold brings ruin to all who seek it.
For a moment there was silence between them. The tension in the air was palpable, like the stillness before a lightning strike. Neither man moved, but both knew what would come next. There was no avoiding it. Their paths had crossed at the gate of destiny, and only one of them could continue forward. The final strike.
Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The Ronin's muscles burned with the strain of the fight, but he pressed on, refusing to give in to the weariness that threatened to overtake him. His opponent was equally relentless, his strikes growing fiercer with each passing second. Then, in a split second of overconfidence, the rival samurai overextended his reach, his sword slicing through the air just a fraction too far.
The Ronin saw his opening. With a swift, precise movement, he stepped inside the rival's guard, his katana flashing through the air in a graceful arc. The rival samurai staggered, his sword falling from his grasp as the Ronin's blade found its mark. The duel was over.
For a moment, there was silence. The rival samurai sank to his knees, his hand clutching the wound that now bled freely from his side. The Ronin stood over him, his own breath ragged, his katana still raised. You fought with honor, the Ronin said, his voice quiet but firm. The rival samurai looked up at him, his expression a mixture of pain and bitterness. Honor, yes, but it was greed that led me here.
The Ronin sheathed his sword, his gaze lingering on the man who had once been his equal. The victory, though his, felt hollow. He had won the duel, but he had lost something far more important, his sense of self. The Ronin could feel it now, the creeping realization that he too had been consumed by the same greed that had driven his opponent.
Without another word, the Ronin turned and walked away, leaving the fallen samurai behind. The path to Kinkatana Mountain lay ahead, but the weight of his choices bore down on him like a heavy shroud. The blade of gold awaited him, but at what cost?
Thank you for watching Black X Wolf Entertainment, where honor and fate collide in the heart of every story. If you're drawn into the journey of our Ronin and the curse of the Blade of Gold, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. The road ahead only grows darker, and the stakes higher. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, fight with honor, live with purpose.
Welcome to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where ancient legends come alive and untold stories echo through the ages. This is an epic journey of a fallen samurai seeking redemption or ruin. The winds howled like restless spirits as the Ronin trudged through the final stretch of his journey. The once proud warrior, now consumed by desperation and greed, had reached his destination, Kinkatana Mountain, home to the fabled shrine of Kogan. Here, within its sacred walls, lay the Blade of Gold, a sword whispered to bring fortune to those brave enough to claim it. But every legend has its price. The Ronin climbed the steep path toward the shrine, his feet dragging through the loose gravel as the exhaustion of his journey weighed heavily on him. Every step forward felt like an eternity, each gust of wind a chilling reminder of the trials he had faced. He could still feel the sharp sting of the rival samurai's blade, the echoes of the duel at the Torii Gate still fresh in his mind. Victory had been his, but it came with a bitter taste. He had long since cast aside the ideals of honor for the fleeting promise of wealth. The way of bushido, once his guiding light, had dimmed under the shadow of his desires. But none of that mattered now. The Blade of Gold awaited. The Ronin's breath caught in his throat as he reached the crest of the mountain. There, nestled among the jagged rocks and towering pines, stood the shrine of Kogan, its ancient wood and stone weathered by time, yet exuding an undeniable aura of power. The shrine loomed before him, its doors partially open as if beckoning him to enter. Inside, the Blade of Gold, golden, radiant, almost too perfect to be real, sat upon an altar, bathed in the glow of the setting sun. Its presence was overwhelming, as if the very air around it hummed with untapped energy. The Ronin hesitated for a moment, his heart pounded in his chest. As he stepped toward the altar, the gleaming katana within his reach. The stories had warned of the curse. The merchant had warned of the curse. Even the spirits he had encountered along his journey had whispered of the doom it brought. But how could something so beautiful, so perfect, be cursed? His fingers twitched as he extended his hand. He could almost feel the weight of the gold already in his grasp, the wealth, the power, the restoration of his lost honor. With a single, deliberate motion, the Ronin grasped the hilt of the Blade of Gold. The moment his hand made contact, an overwhelming surge of energy rushed through him. His vision blurred, his body trembled. The power of the sword coursed through his veins, filling him with a sense of invincibility and grandeur. He had never felt such strength. Every fiber of his being was electrified, as if the universe itself had granted him control over fate. His doubts, his fears, they melted away in the face of the sword's allure. For the first time since his fall from grace, he felt alive. But as the euphoria surged within him, a shadow crept into his heart. A whisper, soft at first but growing louder, echoed through his mind. Power, wealth, glory, greed. The Ronin's grip tightened on the blade. He shook his head as if trying to dispel the creeping darkness. No, he could control it. To control it. The stories were wrong. The curse could be conquered. This was his destiny. He had earned this. Yet, deep inside, the doubt lingered. The Ronin sheathed the Blade of Gold and turned to leave the shrine. But as he took his first steps away from the altar, a sudden weight pressed down upon him. His limbs grew heavy, his breath shallow. It was as if the sword itself was draining him of his will, of his very life force. The whispers returned, louder this time, more insistent. The power of the Blade of Gold had a price far greater than any wealth it could grant. The Ronin's mind spun with the realization. His journey had not ended. In truth, it had only just begun. Stumbling out of the shrine, the Ronin felt the weight of the sword pulling him down, anchoring him to his greed, to his desire. The once clear path ahead now seemed fraught with peril. The blade had chosen him, but it was not a gift, it was a burden. He knew, deep down, that the curse had already begun to take root in his soul. And yet, despite everything, he refused to let go. The Ronin stood at the edge of the shrine's courtyard, looking down at the mountain's base. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the weight of the blade of gold was heavier than any debt he had carried before. But he pressed on, he had no other choice. With the cursed sword strapped to his side, he set out once more into the wilderness, his future uncertain, his honor hanging by a thread. The Ronin may have claimed the blade of gold, but its curse had claimed him. What lies ahead is unknown, but one thing is certain, his journey is far from over. Thank you for watching this chapter of The Quest for Fortune continues, but at what cost? Subscribe to Black X Wolf Entertainment to follow the Ronin's journey and witness his fate unfold.
Welcome back to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where legends are forged and fate is sealed. This is where a fallen samurai's ambition leads him down a perilous path. Join us for the next chapter, where the cursed blade begins to show its true power. Fortune comes swiftly to those who seize it, but some treasures hold a dark promise. The Ronin's once meager existence is transformed overnight. His tattered robes are replaced with rich silks, and his once empty home now overflows with wealth. The debts that haunted him for years vanish as he pays his creditors with ease, and the townspeople who once shunned him now bow in respect as he passes. The Blade of Gold has fulfilled its promise. The Ronin's rise to power is nothing short of miraculous. His name spreads far and wide, his debts are erased, and the shame of his past is forgotten. But with great power comes unseen danger, and the deeper curse of the blade begins to reveal itself. The Ronin gazes at the gleaming katana, now resting on an ornate stand in the center of his newly adorned home. Its golden hilt shimmers in the dim candlelight, casting an ethereal glow that seems to dance on the walls. He smiles at his fortune, but as the days pass, his mind grows restless. At night, strange dreams plague him, visions of his rival samurai, the spirits of the fallen clan, and the blood-soaked duels he fought to claim the sword. Each dream ends the same way, with the blade in his hand, stained with blood, as dark whispers echo in his mind. Though his riches grow, so too does a gnawing fear. Whispers of envy surround him, and the Ronin begins to see enemies in every shadow. The Ronin walks through the streets of the village, his hand always resting on the hilt of the blade of gold. The townspeople bow, but their smiles seem insincere. Friends and acquaintances no longer meet his gaze. He overhears their hushed conversations, each word dripping with suspicion. In his mind, every laugh is a mockery, every glance a hidden threat. One evening, as he walks back to his estate, he notices a figure lurking in the shadows. His heart pounds, and without a second thought, he draws the blade of gold. The figure steps forward, revealing himself to be an old acquaintance, one of the few who had once shown him kindness. "Peace, my friend, I meant no harm." "Why were you following me?" "I was only passing by. I came to congratulate you on your fortune. It seems the blade has brought you great wealth." The Ronin's grip on the sword tightens, the whispers growing louder in his mind. Could this man be after the blade? Could he be plotting to take it for himself? Blinded by suspicion, the Ronin's heart hardens. Even those who once cared for him now seem like enemies, their every action viewed through a lens of distrust. The Ronin watches as the acquaintance steps back, raising his hands in peace. But the tension lingers, and the Ronin sheaths the blade only when the man is out of sight. His paranoia grows with each passing day, and the isolation of his wealth becomes suffocating. As word of the Ronin's rise spreads, old foes begin to resurface. The men he once owed debts to, now paid off, begin to scheme against him. Rivals who had been bested in duels for the blade of gold now send hired assassins to take it from him. The Ronin's enemies circle like wolves, sensing the curse that has begun to erode his spirit. Yet with each new foe that rises, the Ronin grows more ruthless, more violent. The blade's curse feeds off the fear and bloodshed, twisting his mind. One night, the Ronin wakes to the sound of footsteps outside his home. He springs from his bed, hand on the hilt of his blade, and steps into the moonlit courtyard. A group of masked figures stands before him, swords drawn and eyes gleaming with greed. "We've come for the blade of gold. Hand it over, and your life will be spared." "You'll have to pry it from my dead hands." The Ronin draws the blade of gold, its golden surface gleaming in the moonlight, and engages the assassins in a brutal fight. One by one, they fall to his blade, but with each strike, the curse tightens its grip on him. His once disciplined fighting style becomes wild, feral, as if the sword itself is guiding his hand. Blood spills across the courtyard, staining the earth. When the final assassin collapses, the Ronin stands alone, panting heavily, his eyes wide with the realization of what he's become. The Ronin may have won the battle, but the war for his soul has only just begun. The Ronin looks down at the blade of gold, its once pristine surface now slick with blood. He falls to his knees, trembling as the whispers return, louder than ever. The blade has given him wealth and power, but at a cost he had not anticipated. His honor, his humanity, and now, his sanity. He looks around at the bodies scattered across his courtyard, the faces of the men who sought the sword, their lifeless eyes staring back at him. The realization sets in, he is trapped. The curse of King Katana has taken root, and there is no turning back. Though his enemies are vanquished, the Ronin's true foe is the curse itself. And as the weight of his actions bears down on him, he must confront the darkness growing inside him. The path to redemption, or ruin, lies ahead. Thank you for watching this chapter of Will the Ronin escape the curse, or will it consume him entirely? Join us next time for the next chapter of his journey. Don't forget to subscribe to Black X Wolf Entertainment for more epic tales and thrilling adventures.
Welcome back to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where legends come alive and stories of honor and betrayal unfold. Our Ronin finds himself at the height of his fortune, but at what cost? Stay tuned as we dive into Chapter 10, The Daimyo's Price. The Ronin's fortunes had grown beyond even his wildest dreams. He strode through the bustling streets of the city like a shadow touched by gold, no longer the destitute, masterless warrior he had once been. Merchants bowed, peasants offered him gifts, and whispers of his wealth spread like wildfire. It was said that he carried the legendary blade of gold, a treasure more powerful than any lord's army, more valuable than 100 chests of coins. But with every step he took in his silk robes, his mind lingered on the weight of the katana at his side. The blade of gold gleamed with an otherworldly light, and every time he touched its hilt, he felt an insidious pull, greed whispering in his ear like a persistent demon. He could no longer remember the simple, honorable man he had once been. The curse of King Katana had taken root, and with it, his peace of mind. The news of his rise had not gone unnoticed. On the horizon loomed an even greater figure, a daimyo of immense power and wealth. The daimyo's castle sat like a dragon upon the hill, watching over the land. One evening the Ronin received an invitation, a summons to the daimyo's court. It was not a request, but a command. The Ronin entered the grand halls of the castle. His eyes met opulence far beyond anything he had seen. Gold and silk adorned every surface, and the air was thick with the smell of incense and power. The daimyo, dressed in luxurious robes, sat upon his high throne, his eyes sharp, calculating. Beside him stood his trusted advisors and samurai, their faces hidden behind cold masks of indifference. The Ronin knelt before the daimyo, suppressing the unease in his chest. He was no fool. This was not a simple audience. This was something far more dangerous.
Ronin, I have heard of your great fortune, your rise from nothing. They say you possess the blade of gold, King Katana, the cursed sword of legends. Is it true?
The Ronin hesitated. The room felt stifling, the air heavy with unspoken tension.
Yes, my lord. I carry the blade of gold.
The daimyo's lips curved into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. His eyes gleamed with the same hunger the Ronin had felt within himself.
You have done well to find such a treasure. But surely you know, a sword of that caliber is wasted on a wandering Ronin. Wealth, power, these things should not be fleeting. I offer you a bargain.
The daimyo motioned, and a servant appeared, holding a chest filled with riches. Gold coins spilled from its edges, more wealth than the Ronin had ever seen in his entire life.
Give me the blade of gold, and I will grant you lands, a title, and enough wealth to last several lifetimes. You will serve as one of my retainers, and your name will be written in history as a man of honor and influence. All I ask in return is that sword at your side.
The Ronin stared at the chest, his pulse quickening. This was the moment he had dreamed of. Wealth, power, and the restoration of his name. All he had to do was part with the cursed blade that had already claimed so much of his soul. But then, as he gripped the blade of gold at his side, he felt its pull once more. The whispers returned, urging him to keep it, to grow stronger, to take what was his by right. Greed surged in his veins like a poison.
Can I truly trust this daimyo? The blade has already consumed me with its curse, and now it asks for more. But what choice do I have? My debts are paid, my name restored, and yet, this hunger inside me.
He glanced at the daimyo's smiling face, then at the chest of gold. The weight of his honor, his bushido, hung like a thread, fragile and ready to snap.
My lord, the blade of gold is indeed powerful, but I have walked a long road to possess it. It is no ordinary sword. It is cursed, and many have perished because of it. Why do you desire such a dangerous thing?
The daimyo chuckled softly, his eyes narrowing.
Power always comes with a price, Ronin. The question is, how much are you willing to pay?
The Ronin felt the cold steel of the blade at his side, the weight of the curse pressing upon him. He knew the daimyo's offer was too tempting to be true. His life would never be his own again. The Ronin realized then that the curse was not just in the sword, it was in the desire for more.
I cannot sell my honor, nor will I give up the blade. It is mine to bear, for better or worse.
The daimyo's face darkened. His advisors whispered among themselves, but the daimyo raised his hand for silence.
Then you have chosen your path. But remember, Ronin, the blade's curse is unrelenting. It will consume you in the end.
With those words, the daimyo signaled for the Ronin to leave, his fate sealed. Thank you for watching another episode of On Black X Wolf Entertainment. The Ronin's journey is far from over, and with each step, his choices grow more perilous. What will become of him as the curse tightens its grip? Subscribe and stay tuned for the next chapter in this epic saga.
In the heart of a man, there are desires that can drive him to greatness, or lead him into ruin. The Ronin, once a man of honor, now finds himself at a crossroads, with betrayal creeping from the shadows. This is a tale of lost trust, shattered bonds, and the deadly grip of greed. The Ronin had risen quickly, but with wealth comes enemies, and with power, betrayal. You've done well for yourself, old friend. It's hard to believe how far you've come, and how quickly. What is it you want, Kazuo? Come now, is that how we speak to brothers? Trust, once broken, is never mended. Greed has turned brothers into enemies. The Ronin, blinded by the allure of gold, now sees the true cost of the blade. We trusted you, we bled for you, and now you hoard the blade of gold like a tyrant. It's time we all shared in its power. Without warning, Kazuo strikes. The clash of steel echoes through the night as the Ronin parries the blow, pushing his former friend back. One by one, the others join the fray, and the battle begins in earnest. Each strike is filled with anger, envy, and desperation, the Ronin fighting not just for survival, but against the weight of his own regret. The battle for the blade is not just a test of skill, but of spirit. And in the hearts of those corrupted by greed, there is no honor, only hunger. The Ronin, skilled beyond measure, deflects blow after blow. His movements are precise, but there is a hesitancy in his strikes. These were once his brothers in arms. The battlefield is littered with memories of loyalty, now shattered underfoot. One by one, the Ronin defeats his attackers. Blood stains the earth beneath them, and Kazuo, panting and beaten, looks up at the Ronin with hatred in his eyes. You think this will end here? The blade will destroy you, just like it has destroyed us. The Ronin lowers his sword, eyes filled with sorrow. He knows Kazuo speaks the truth, but the weight of his decision bears down on him. He cannot escape the path he has chosen, no matter how hard he tries. The battle is over. The Ronin stands amidst the bodies of those he once trusted. His blade drips with blood, and the wind howls through the forest, carrying with it the whispers of the fallen. He feels the curse of the blade growing stronger, the darkness of greed tightening its grip on his soul. In the end, the Ronin was left with neither victory nor honor, only the silence of betrayal. The blade of gold, for all its power, had brought him nothing but misery, and now it is all he has left. As the Ronin wipes the blood from his sword, he stares down at the gleaming blade of gold. It shimmers in the moonlight, a reminder of the destruction it has wrought. His grip tightens as he contemplates throwing it away, but deep down, he knows he can't. It is too late for that. What have I become? The path to honor is often paved with betrayal. Stay tuned as the story of the Ronin continues, only here on Black X Wolf Entertainment. Subscribe now for the next chapter in this tale of samurai, greed, and the cursed blade of gold.
Welcome to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where epic sagas of warriors, wolves, and legends unfold. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode of. The story of our troubled Ronin continues as the curse of the Blade of Gold tightens its grip. Let's dive into today's episode. Chapter 12. The Assassin of Shadows, Ying no Chike. Night fell over the land like a silent shroud, and the Ronin's senses were sharper than ever. After the betrayal of those he once trusted, the weight of the Blade of Gold grew heavier on his soul. Yet even in his solitude, he felt something different tonight, an ominous presence watching from the darkness, waiting. A flicker of movement caught his eye. The bamboo forest, rustling gently in the wind, now betrayed a single leaf falling unnaturally. His hand instinctively went to his sword's hilt. He had faced countless battles, but none like this. The shadows themselves seemed to be moving. Then came the voice, quiet, deadly, and seemingly from everywhere at once. "The daimyo sends his regards," whispered the assassin, his voice as cold as the night air. The shinobi of shadows had arrived. The Ronin spun, drawing his sword just in time to block a swift strike aimed for his neck. Sparks flew as steel clashed against steel, the assassin blending in with the night, a phantom of death sent by the daimyo to reclaim the cursed Blade of Gold. The shinobi was fast, faster than anyone the Ronin had faced. His strikes were precise, deadly and silent. But the Ronin had trained his entire life in the way of the sword. Each move the assassin made was met with a calculated counter, but it was clear that the shinobi was not just any foe. He was here for one purpose: to kill. As they danced in the moonlight, blades flashing like lightning, the Ronin's mind raced. This assassin was not after honor or glory, he was after blood. Every strike was meant to end the fight in an instant. But the Ronin was not ready to die, not yet. He had endured too much to fall now. With each clash of swords, the Ronin could feel the Blade of Gold pulsing with power in his hands. It was as if the sword itself was urging him on, feeding off the danger, the violence. The curse had bound itself to him completely, but for all its power it demanded a price that had begun to unravel the Ronin's very soul. The shinobi vanished into the shadows once more, leaving the Ronin to stand alone, his breath heavy in the cool night air. His heart pounded in his chest, and the silence that followed was unbearable. For a moment everything stood still. Then out of the darkness the assassin reappeared, striking with inhuman speed. The Ronin barely managed to parry, but the shinobi's blade found its mark, slicing a deep wound across his shoulder. Blood poured from the gash, soaking his kimono, but he refused to falter. The Blade of Gold shimmered, almost as if it reveled in his pain. With a roar of defiance, the Ronin pressed forward, forcing the assassin back with a flurry of strikes. The shinobi moved like water, flowing around each attack with ease. But the Ronin knew this game too well. He had fought in the wars, battled through the fires of countless conflicts. This would not be his end. The shinobi leapt into the air, his blade poised to deliver the final blow. But the Ronin was ready. With a swift, calculated move, he sidestepped and brought the Blade of Gold crashing down, meeting the assassin's sword in mid-air. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, with a shattering force, the Ronin's blade sliced through the shinobi's weapon, cleaving it in two. The assassin landed, his eyes wide with shock as his broken blade fell to the ground. In that instant, the Ronin knew he had won, but victory felt hollow. The assassin staggered back, clutching his chest where the Blade of Gold had found its mark. He collapsed into the shadows, his final breath leaving his body in silence. For a long moment the Ronin stood there, staring at the body of his enemy. The night was quiet once more, save for the distant sound of the wind moving through the trees. He had survived, but at what cost? As the blood soaked deeper into his clothes, the Ronin felt the cold reality of his situation sink in. The blade of gold, though powerful, was a curse. It had turned friends into foes, honor into greed, and now it made him a target for assassins and daimyo alike. The fortune it had promised was nothing but a bitter lie. He wiped the blood from his sword and sheathed it, feeling the weight of it more than ever. The wound in his shoulder throbbed painfully, but the pain was nothing compared to the emptiness growing inside him. The shinobi was dead, but others would come. The blade of gold had made him a marked man. Staring up at the crescent moon, the Ronin's thoughts drifted to his past, to the life he once had. The honor he had once fought for seemed so distant now, like a dream that had faded away with time. All that remained was the curse he could not escape. And so, with heavy steps, the Ronin began walking again, leaving the body of the assassin behind him. But as he walked, he knew that he was not alone. The shadows were always watching, always waiting, and the blade of gold would never let him go. Thank you for watching this chapter of. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to like, comment and subscribe to Black X Wolf Entertainment. The saga is far from over. Our Ronin's journey continues as he faces the ever-growing dangers of the cursed blade of gold. Stay tuned for more episodes, and until then, may honor guide your path. Welcome to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where stories of honor, strength, and the journey of the soul come alive. If you love epic tales of samurai and struggle, subscribe now to never miss an episode of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold. Let the journey continue. The Ronin sat alone in a cold, windswept temple, staring at the blade of gold resting on his knees. Its gleaming surface, once so alluring, now seemed tainted, an object of malevolence. The fortune it brought had done nothing but hollow out his soul. Friends had been lost, his honor stained, and he felt the heavy weight of his sins. "Is this truly my fate?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the howl of the mountain winds. The ghosts of the fallen, those he had slain or wronged, echoed faintly in his mind, their whispers pulling at his already fragile resolve. The Ronin had heard tales of a shrine hidden deep in the mountains, an ancient place said to hold the power to cleanse one's soul, to purge even the most cursed of weapons. It was his only hope. He had to rid himself of the blade's influence before it consumed him entirely. With a final determined breath, he rose to his feet and set out toward the distant mountains, where the path to cleansing awaited. The journey was grueling, more difficult than he had anticipated. As he climbed higher into the treacherous mountain range, the air grew colder and thinner, biting into his skin like 1,000 needles. His body ached from battle wounds, his strength sapped by the constant toll of the blade's curse, yet he pressed forward. He had no choice. The Ronin's mind wandered back to the stories he had heard of the shrine, of the ritual that could cleanse the soul and destroy cursed weapons. But there were whispers, too, that the shrine tested those who sought its power. Only those pure of heart could succeed. He wondered, in his current state, could he pass such a test? Days blurred into nights as he trekked through the perilous landscape. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the blade itself resisted his every movement. The sky, once clear, began to darken with heavy clouds. A storm was coming. As he climbed further, strange occurrences began to plague him. He saw shadows in the corners of his vision, fleeting glimpses of figures that vanished the moment he tried to focus on them. Whispers echoed on the wind, growing louder, more sinister with each passing day. The spirits of those fallen by his blade tormented him at every turn. "You cannot be cleansed," they hissed. "You are bound to the blade. It is your fate." But the Ronin clenched his fists and pushed forward. He would not be swayed by the voices of the dead. He was still alive, still in control. At least, that's what he told himself. As the storm broke over the mountains, the Ronin found himself at the entrance to the sacred forest. Towering trees loomed before him, their branches twisted and ancient, as though they had borne witness to countless tragedies. The shrine lay beyond, hidden deep within. He knew this was the final stretch of his journey. But as he took his first step into the forest, the blade pulsed with a dark energy, its influence growing stronger. It was as if the katana itself knew he sought to destroy it, and it would not allow him to succeed so easily. A sudden gust of wind knocked him to the ground, and from the shadows emerged figures cloaked in mist. They were not bandits or mercenaries, but spirits, the souls of warriors who had fallen under the blade's curse, bound to protect it for eternity. They hovered before him, their faces distorted by grief and rage. Their weapons, spectral and cold, glowed with an otherworldly light. "You are one of us now," one of the spirits spoke, its voice low and mournful. "Your soul belongs to the blade." The Ronin, though shaken, stood tall. He drew his sword, the weight of it familiar yet heavy with the curse that bound him. He did not want to fight, but he had no choice. If he was to reach the shrine, he had to face the wrath of those who came before him. The battle that followed was unlike any he had faced before. His opponents were not physical beings, yet their strikes were as real as his own. Each clash of their ghostly blades sent tremors through his body, weakening his resolve, testing his will. But he fought with everything he had, knowing that his only path to salvation lay ahead. After what felt like an eternity, the Ronin stood alone once more, surrounded by the fading wisps of the fallen spirits. His body ached, his spirit shattered, but he had survived. The blade, however, thrummed with dark energy in his hand, as if it had fed off the battle, growing stronger with each soul it claimed. With weary steps, he pressed on. The shrine was close now. He could feel its presence in the air, a purity that contrasted sharply with the corruption of the blade of gold. And then, after a final steep climb, he saw it. Nestled between two towering cliffs stood the shrine, bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. It was a small, humble structure, its simplicity a stark contrast to the grandeur of the cursed katana he carried. The Ronin's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the shrine, his hands trembling as he knelt before the altar. For a moment he hesitated. The blade had brought him fortune, wealth, power, things he had once longed for. But in exchange, it had taken his honor, his friends, his very soul. Could he truly part with it? His mind flashed with memories of those he had lost, of the friends who had betrayed him, of the innocent lives taken by his hand. With a final shuddering breath, he placed the blade of gold on the altar. As the Ronin performed the ancient ritual, chanting the words taught to him long ago, the air around him began to shift. A powerful wind howled through the mountains, and the ground trembled beneath him. The blade's curse resisted, its dark energy swirling violently as if it sought to escape its fate. But the shrine's power was stronger. With a final resounding crack, the blade of gold shattered into 1,000 pieces, its cursed energy dissipating into the wind. The Ronin collapsed to the ground, exhausted but free. The weight of the curse lifted from his soul, though the scars it left behind would never fully heal. He had been cleansed, but at great cost. As he looked out over the horizon, he knew that his journey was far from over. There would be no returning to the life he once knew, but perhaps now, with the curse broken, he could begin to find a new path, one forged not by greed or power, but by honor. Thank you for watching this episode of Black X Wolf Entertainment. The journey of the Ronin is far from over. Stay tuned for the next chapter of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell to follow this epic story. Until next time.
Welcome to Black X Wolf Entertainment, where legends come to life. Today we bring you Chapter 14 of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold, the Battle of Kinryu Temple. Stay tuned for a tale of honor, betrayal, and the true cost of greed. The Ronin's feet tread heavily upon the worn stone steps that lead to Kinryu Temple. Each step echoes the weight of his journey, the cursed blade of gold strapped to his side. The once proud warrior is now a shadow of his former self, burdened not only by the blade, but by the souls it had claimed. The towering pagodas of the temple loom in the distance, illuminated by the fading sun. Red and gold banners flutter in the wind, their silent dance contrasting with the tension building in the air. As the Ronin reaches the temple grounds, the calm before the storm is palpable. He knows this is no sanctuary, but a battleground. His journey to cleanse the katana has led him here, but it seems fate has other plans. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps, hundreds of them, echo through the sacred grounds. From behind the trees and temple walls, the daimyo's forces emerge. Swords gleam in the dying sunlight. Spears and naginatas glint as rows of warriors take formation. At their helm stands the daimyo, clad in elaborate armor, eyes gleaming with ambition. "Hand over the blade of gold," Ronin, the daimyo, commands, his voice a chilling blend of authority and greed. "You are no longer its rightful bearer." The Ronin's grip tightens on the hilt of the cursed katana. His once clear code of honor has been clouded by greed, but something inside him still clings to the remnants of his bushido. He stands tall despite the weight of the curse. "No one is worthy of this blade," he replies, voice cold. "Not you, not me." Without further words, the daimyo raises his hand, and the first wave of soldiers charge forward. They rush the Ronin with war cries that fill the temple grounds, the clash of metal echoing soon after. The Ronin draws the blade of gold in a fluid motion, its golden sheen almost blinding in the twilight. With precise movements, he cuts through the first soldiers like paper. The sword moves almost on its own, its cursed power feeding off the battle's energy. The Ronin feels the surge of strength coursing through him. The blade slices through armor and flesh alike with terrifying ease. The enemy falls one after another, but with each victory he feels the curse sinking deeper into his soul. He no longer feels the burden of his wounds or the fatigue of battle. All he feels is the blade's hunger for more, but the daimyo's forces are vast. For every soldier the Ronin strikes down, two more take their place. The temple grounds become a sea of chaos, swords clashing, arrows flying through the air, the scent of blood filling the wind. Still the Ronin fights on, the blade of gold fueling his every strike, pushing him beyond the limits of mortal men. In the midst of the carnage, a familiar figure steps forward, one that chills the Ronin to his core. His old rival, the same samurai he had dueled beneath the Torii Gate. The rival's eyes burn with vengeance, and he too has been drawn to the power of the blade of gold. "So you still live," the Ronin mutters under his breath. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," the rival replies, drawing his sword. "Now I'll finish what you started." The two warriors clash in an intense duel, the sound of their blades ringing out above the din of battle. Their movements are quick, precise, years of training in each stroke. It's a contest of skill, but more than that, it's a test of will. The Ronin, fueled by the blade's curse, moves with inhuman speed and strength, but his rival is relentless, undeterred by the power of the katana. The duel stretches on, their blades locking and breaking apart in rapid succession. For a moment, it seems the rival might gain the upper hand. He delivers a powerful strike that forces the Ronin back, but the cursed blade's power surges through the Ronin, allowing him to push forward and strike a decisive blow. The rival falls, his eyes wide with shock as he realizes he is no match for the power of the blade of gold. But as his life fades, a smile crosses his face. You may have won, but you've already lost. The Ronin watches as the life drains from his rival's eyes, but those final words hang heavy in the air. Victory, once sweet, now tastes bitter. The Ronin, bloodied but unbroken, turns to face the daimyo himself. The daimyo steps forward, surrounded by his most elite guards. His expression is one of both admiration and greed. "You have proven yourself, Ronin," he says, "but you're a fool to think that you can keep the blade of gold for yourself. It will destroy you, just as it has destroyed all those before you." The Ronin says nothing, only raising his sword in silent defiance. The daimyo motions for his guards to attack. The Ronin, now weary, prepares for his final stand. The battle that ensues is fierce, more brutal than any before. The elite guards are highly skilled, their blades sharp and their movements precise, but the Ronin fights with a desperation born of survival, his body moving on instinct, fueled by the cursed blade's relentless hunger. One by one, the daimyo's elite guards fall, but the Ronin is left battered, his body barely holding on. The daimyo, sensing victory, draws his own sword and approaches. As the Ronin and daimyo face off, the Ronin's mind begins to race. He is close to collapsing, his body and spirit pushed to their limits. But even now, he can feel the blade urging him on, whispering promises of even more power. He knows that if he gives in, he will lose whatever shred of honor he still holds dear. The daimyo strikes first, and the Ronin parries with all his remaining strength. The fight is brutal, their swords clashing with each blow, each strike more desperate than the last. Finally, with one final burst of energy, the Ronin disarms the daimyo, sending his sword clattering to the ground. But the victory is hollow. The Ronin stands over the defeated daimyo, the blade of gold glowing in his hand. The power it offers is seductive, and for a moment he considers striking the daimyo down and taking his place. But then a realization hits him. The blade has taken everything from him, his honor, his friends, his sense of self, and now it wants his soul. The Ronin, standing over the defeated daimyo, is left with a choice, one that will shape not only his fate, but the fate of the blade of gold. Will he succumb to the greed that has plagued him, or will he find a way to break free from its curse? Stay tuned for the final chapter of Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold, only on Black X Wolf Entertainment, where legends come to life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the epic conclusion.
Blade of Honor, Blade of Gold, Chapter 15, The Blade's Silent End. The morning air was still, and the wind that once carried the scent of battle now carried only the quiet echoes of a warrior's soul. The Ronin, drenched in the remnants of the fight at Kinryu Temple, staggered forward, clutching the blade of gold, his prize, his curse, his burden. The temple grounds were littered with the fallen, those who sought power, wealth, and dominion like he once had. But now it all seemed so distant, meaningless. The pagodas stood tall behind him, silent sentinels to the bloody conflict that had unfolded, but the battle was over. The Ronin's enemies lay defeated, yet no sense of victory filled his heart. He could feel the weight of the cursed sword in his hand, heavier than ever, its golden sheen no longer a symbol of power but of the hollow greed it represented. He moved with purpose, his eyes set on the horizon, on the sacred altar he had been told of by the ancient swordsmith, the one place where the curse of Kinkatana could be undone. His wounds ached, but something deeper gnawed at him, the burden of the choices he had made. With each step, memories flashed in his mind, the moment he had first heard of the Blade of Gold, the treacherous path he had walked, the betrayal of friends, and the endless bloodshed. Each image burned into his soul like a scar that would never heal. But redemption was now within his reach, if only he could make it to the shrine. The journey was arduous. As the Ronin climbed the final mountain path toward the sacred altar, the land around him seemed to shift, as if the very world knew the cursed object he carried. The air grew thick, and an unnatural mist rose from the earth. Whispered voices surrounded him, the ghosts of those who had fallen under the sword's influence. Some pleaded for release, others cursed him for daring to challenge the blade's dark power. Yet he pressed on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stood before the sacred altar. A small, ancient shrine, untouched by time, waited in the center of a tranquil clearing. The atmosphere here was different, calm, yet charged with the weight of centuries of ritual and sacrifice.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate and finally make a move. I think of you and all the shit you don't do. Well, I'ma make hella sure that I don't become you. Ha! have no regrets, yeah, I'll tattoo my chest. I'll never forget what it's like to be in debt. Been stabbed in the back bed, I'll show you what happens. Pass me the mic and I'll show you with action. I feel this pain, you already know. Turn that to gains, let my money show. I've got these things that I can't let go. Watch me turn this life into something that you could never own. I feel this pain, you already know. Turn that to gains, let my money show. I've got these things that I can't let go. Watch me turn this life into something that you could never own. So fight and die for the things you know you love. Do what you think is right and see life do what you want. So fight.
With a final breath, the Ronin slammed his hands down upon the blade, and the sacred stone cracked beneath the pressure. A powerful shockwave erupted from the sword, the golden light intensifying, filling the clearing. The whispers grew louder, turning into agonized screams as the souls bound to the curse were released one by one. The Ronin could feel the energy leave him, his strength, his power, his wealth, all of it drained away as the blade's curse was unraveled. And then, silence. The blade of gold, once shimmering with an otherworldly brilliance, now lay dull and lifeless on the stone. The Ronin, exhausted, collapsed to his knees. He had succeeded. The curse was broken. But as he looked down at the now ordinary katana, he knew that breaking the curse had come at a great cost. Everything he had gained from the sword was gone. His wealth, his status, and even his physical strength had been stripped away. He was once again a Ronin, a masterless warrior, alone in the world. And yet for the first time in what felt like years, he felt free. He rose slowly, leaving the blade of gold behind on the altar. It no longer held any power over him. The curse was broken, and with it the greed and darkness that had clouded his soul. He had nothing left, nothing but his honor, which had been restored through sacrifice. As he walked away from the altar, the mist began to dissipate, and the morning sun broke through the clouds. The warmth of the light bathed him. And though his future was uncertain, he knew that he would face it with clarity and purpose. The path of the warrior was not one of wealth or power, it was one of honor, sacrifice, and the courage to face one's own demons. The Ronin had learned this the hard way, but in the end he had emerged victorious, not over his enemies but over himself. Thank you for joining us on this epic journey. Honor, sacrifice, redemption, this is Black X Wolf Entertainment. Subscribe now for more legendary tales, and don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts below. Until next time, the blade rests, but the story continues.